Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. It is finally here. I have my copy of Blackstone Fortress Deadly Alliance. This is, of course, the expansion that was about to go up for pre-order, and then Games Workshop had to go into lockdown, and then we had to wait several months for it, and then when Games Workshop reopened, it was a few more weeks before it turned up. I pre-ordered this through Element Games as soon as I had an opportunity to do so, and they dispatched it just before the release date, and I received it on June the 20th, which is actually the day that this product went to full retail release. So I got it bang on time, and it just so happened that the 20th of June was also my birthday, so this was a happy little coincidence and a wonderful little gift to myself on my birthday. This is an expansion that falls into the same sort of category as Dreaded Amble or Traitor Command in terms of the size of the packaging. If you would put this next to Traitor Command, the boxes are around about the same, but the price is $37.50 at full retail. I actually got it for £30 through Element Games when I pre-ordered, but I have since looked on the Element Games website and the price has gone up just a little bit. But for £30, it's a decent sized expansion, because although the box is the same sort of size as Traitor Command, this is actually an expansion which falls more in line with No Respite in terms of the type of content you're getting, because rather than Dreaded Amble and Traitor Command, which had randomly generated expeditions where you gradually accumulated MacGuffins that you could then cash in to go into a final stronghold and complete the quest, Deadly Alliance follows the No Respite format of having several strongholds, and each time you play a game of Deadly Alliance, you pick one of the strongholds to tackle. You will do an entrance route, which will be a number of exploration cards, and then you get a special map layout that will dictate how that fight will pan out and what rewards you get for completing it. And once you've completed 3 strongholds, you will have all of the information you need to go on to tackle the final confrontation. And the basic premise, for those of you who don't know much about this expansion, which I should imagine is pretty much nobody who's interested in Blackstone Fortress at this point, you have found a particularly dangerous part of the Blackstone Fortress called the Seethe, which is in constant flux. All of the Blackstone Fortress is normally in flux, but this is rapidly changing all the time. It's like trying to wriggle your way through a Rubik's Cube or something. And there is a Zoat who knows how to get through the Seethe, and the Zoat's prepared to come with you as a retinue character. You will tackle the various challenges one after the other, and then you will get to a final stronghold. So this introduces a few new game mechanisms. It introduces maps that shift and adjust, and of course it introduces a Zoat, and the Zoat will work as a retinue character, which means when you're on the Deadly Alliance mission, you won't be able to take any other retinue characters with you. The Zoat will be your retinue selection. And that does make this unique among Blackstone Fortress expansions, in that this is the first time that we have not had any new enemies in an expansion. You're just getting a new retinue character. But of course, this isn't just a boring retinue character. This is a mistrustful Zoat who has his own plans as well that he may be keeping from you. So we will look at the new mechanisms that he introduces, because there is a kind of trust system where you have to keep him on side, and you will constantly lose trust through different things that happen to you during your missions, and you will have to do whatever you can to keep the Zoat on side, or he will rampage off and do his own thing. Which does make this sound a little bit like an escort mission from a video game, which are usually quite annoying. So of course, first of all, and this is going to be the most interesting thing I think for a lot of people, you get a Zoats Miniature, and this is our first Zoats Miniature for a very long time. Much like the Dreaded Amble was the return of an old favourite, this is again the return of something that we haven't seen for a while, and they have brought this miniature up to date and it looks fantastic. And recently I have been spending my time building and painting the miniatures from Elder Scrolls Call to Arms from Devious. The miniatures in that game are good, but it was a shock really that having been working with another company's miniatures for a few weeks, to open this box and see this miniature and just see the level of beautiful detailing, the absolute care and the absolute attention to detail on every single little part of this miniature. And it just reminded me that, when it comes to miniatures, Games Workshop really are hard to beat. Of course, this is the only miniature you get in the box, and he is push fit. You can see he's all keyed. He's got his pegs and his receptacles for those pegs. So without some thought, he's only going together one way. But the final miniature is very nice indeed. But this is the only plastic you are getting, so if you are only interested in the plastic, $37.50 is quite a steep price. I think there will be quite a few people who will be buying this pack for the Zoat and may well then sell the cards online. So this, I think, is going to be, unlike No Respite, which had very easily available miniatures in it, this is going to be one of those expansions where I think you will see people selling the cards online to recoup some of their cost because they really just wanted a couple of Zoats. It is worth noting, in your build instructions for the Archivist, as he is known, there is rules for using him in 40k, and he can ally with any faction, with any army. So there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of different types of armies who are all thinking, great, I get to have a Zoat. Furthermore, not long ago, White Dwarf published rules for using the Zoat in Kill Team, so that's another market for this Zoat miniature. And yet this is the only place where that Zoat is available, so you're really going to be getting quite a few people who are going to be interested in that miniature. They're not going to be interested in a $37.50 price. They're going to have to suck that up and then try and get some of their money back by selling those cards. So for people who love Blackstone Fortress but don't mind proxying and don't really want to deal with the big expensive price tags, I think this is going to be one of the ones that you can pick up for considerably less just for the card components. Before we go any further, it should also be noted that, much like No Respite, this is an expansion that requires you to have the escalation expansion as well as the core set. There are maps that use the escalation map tiles, and also there are combats that require the Firebrand and the Cultists. The Deadly Alliance mission is a standalone mission. It's one of the ones that you're supposed to do once you've completed whatever mission you're on. So you can complete the core mission from the base game, then play this one, or you can finish off Dreaded Amble or Traitor Command if you're working through those, or you can finish Escalation, and then once you've got all of that dealt with, you can pick up the Deadly Alliance mission and slot that into your campaign. When you do that, you will take the Archivist as your retinue character, and he has a special character card, and he also has the Trust card, which is how you're going to keep track of whether he's on your side or not. He's never going to sort of turn around in the middle of a mission and start beating you up, but when you lose trust in him, you lose the control you have over what he does. I'm sure most people at this point will have seen the character card for the Archivist, but he is an absolute beast. He has a move of 2. He defends with the D8, his agility is the D6, and his vitality is the D8. He has 2 weapons. He has the Atomic Disassembler, which has a disintegration attack which ignores cover, and you can see that at range 2 to 3 and range 4, it's pretty powerful. He also has the Eradicator Glove, which is obviously just a close combat weapon, but again is incredibly powerful. Even more so because it has the Mighty Strength rule, which says, when rolling for this attack action, pick 2 results instead of 1 and resolve them one at a time, resolving any successes before any critical successes. He has 6 hit points, and he has the following special rules. He has the Matchless Intelligence, which says, do not treat the Archivist as an explorer during challenge exploration cards. It watches on with disinterest, or uses its biological science to circumnavigate any perils. When a challenge card is turned face up, the leader can choose to lose 6 trust. If they can and do, the challenge is treated as having been resolved. Note that the explorers do not receive any potential rewards or penalties from that challenge card. So you can avoid challenges. This isn't combats, this is specifically challenges, but Every time you do that, the Archivist is going to look at you with disdain and think to himself, why have I allied myself with these guys who are obviously quite cowardly and prepared to take the easy option? He also has a malevolent mind. It says you do not roll activation dice for the Archivist, which is something we have seen with all of the other retinue characters. Instead, it can take up to 3 of the following actions in any order and in any combination. You've got move, attack with the atomic disassembler, attack with the Eradicator Glove, or recuperate. The Archivist cannot be given any relics. Relics are a special thing that you will find throughout this particular campaign. And also, of course, he is huge. Other explorers cannot share a hex with this explorer. He's a big lad. He doesn't have any kind of way to inspire. Instead, he has his trusting side, which we've just seen, and then he has his mistrustful side. When he is mistrustful, you lose that option to skip challenge cards because he's not prepared to help you. Furthermore, you have to, instead of pick his actions, you have to roll on a behavior table, as you do with adversaries. So you lose that control and he becomes more of a loose cannon. Trust is something you're going to have to keep track of throughout the entire mission. At the start of the campaign, the Archivist has a trust value of 10, and that's actually the minimum trust level for him to actually work with you normally, without him going off and doing his own thing. So right from the very beginning of the campaign, you are on a knife edge with him. You need to immediately start encouraging him to be more trusting of you. However, the trust can only go up to a maximum of 12. As soon as you dip below 10, he switches to his mistrustful side. There are obviously rules that dictate when you will lose trust, and they're all listed here on the card. Whenever an explorer becomes inspired, then you will lose 2 trust. When the Archivist is activated, if he has no line of sight to any other explorer, or there are no explorers within 3 hexes, he will lose trust. He will lose trust if he takes a wound or a grievous wound, and he will lose trust if he gets caught in the seethe, which is when the combat maps rearrange themselves, and we'll look at those rules in a moment. There are, of course, ways to regain trust with the Archivist, the most common one being when you draw a card from the Discovery deck, it can be given to the Archivist, and each Archaeotech card given away is discarded, and then he gains trust. While he is mistrustful, he uses this behavior table, and it pretty much boils down to, can he see a hostile or can he not? And then you can see he's got basic recuperate actions he can do, move actions he can do. And then he's got a steady advance where he can make 2 move actions and then make 1 weapon action attack. He has the almighty blow where he will make 1 move action towards the closest visible hostile and then make 1 Eradicator Glove weapon action against 1 visible adjacent hostile. And he can re-roll failed attack rolls for that action. And if there are no visible adjacent hostiles, the Archivist performs the steady advance action instead. And then he has the Reeve move, which says make 1 move action towards the closest hostile, then make 2 weapon actions against the closest visible hostile. So when he's not trusting of you, he's in a bit of a mood. He's got a bit of a Mardy attitude, and he's going to take it out on whatever hostiles he can see. So as you can see, unlike other retinue characters, the Archivist is going to be a core component of your strategy and how you work through this campaign. You're going to be constantly thinking about where he is in relation to you, whether you can afford to give up Archaeotech cards to keep him happy, or whether you really need to keep those to get some upgrades for yourself. That's going to be an interesting decision to make. It's like, how many of these do I need? How many of these do I have to give to him? He's always going to be on your mind. He's always going to be the thing that you base your decisions off of. So that's good. That's how it should be. He is a large, imposing creature, and he should have a large, imposing impact on your game and how it plays. You get a single punch board of double-sided tokens. Most of these are for manipulating the battlefield in some way. We have new hexes which have different in-game functionality. When you go to specific combats using the stronghold rules, there will be certain hexes where you have to go and access terminals or do certain things. These are your markers for indicating where the seethe may activate and where the corridors may change and shift or disappear completely. And then there's a few other environmental type things. And then we have our trust counters here, and we also have we've got a new question mark discovery token, but we've also got 3 counters for 3 special relics. And that's because in each of the first 3 strongholds that you enter, you will acquire a relic when you complete that stronghold. And once you have the 3 relics, you can go on to the final encounter. An interesting thing about the relics is that they are helpful, but they will also hinder you. They actually have a positive thing that they do and a negative thing that they do. So having them at times will be a problem and at times will be very helpful. Furthermore, they may not always be attached to the hero that you want. If you are playing where you have an adversary, where you have a hostile player, every time you go into the seethe, the hostile player actually picks which of the heroes gets the Forerunner relics to represent, I guess, the Zoat handing out the relics to the people that he wants to use them. If you don't have a hostile player, then that decision comes down to the leader, and I guess there will be a little bit more decision making involved as a team if you're playing co-op, but that's up to how your group wants to do it. If you have a leader who wants to be horrible about it, then you can do that too. As you play through the Deadly Alliance mission, you will be using a special deck of discovery cards. You will use all of the Archaeotech cards from the core game, and you will mix in these 12 Shardquake cards. When you're in a combat situation and you reveal a discovery mark or whatever, you draw a discovery card, there is a chance you're going to draw one of these Shardquakes. Whenever you draw a Shardquake, the combat map will reconfigure in a certain way. And how it changes is based on the map setup. You will look at the map and certain areas are coded yellow and certain areas are coded blue. When you first set up a combat situation, you place all the yellow areas and you don't place the blue areas. And then when you get a Shardquake, the yellow areas vanish and the blue areas appear. And then if you get another Shardquake, it switches back the other way. So the blue areas disappear and the yellow areas reappear. So during the combats, the maps will flip about, certain tunnels will open and close. It's an interesting idea. I do worry in practice that it might get a little bit tiresome, keep putting in tiles and taking them out, putting them in, taking them out. But I guess you may only see 1 or 2 Shardquakes on each combat. That's something that I'll have to play through a few times to see whether it's okay or whether it becomes a tiresome bit of bookkeeping that you have to keep doing. But the interesting thing is that this particular mission does have a timer. You don't use the legacy mechanism from the core game. I think this is something that some people question when they start playing the expansions. They go, well, do we still use the legacy cards that are in the core game? And the answer is no. Each expansion is its own contained thing, and you only use the legacy cards for the core game. And that means that the Dreaded Amble and Traitor Command don't actually have any kind of timer mechanism. There is a timer mechanism in Escalation because there is a laser beam that's being fired at Precipice and it will eventually destroy Precipice. And there is a timer mechanism in No Respite because of the spread of the diseases. But in this particular mission, the timer mechanism is the discovery deck. Every time you return to Precipice, you have to discard an Archaeotech card. Once you've discarded 7 Archaeotech cards, you have failed. That's it. The Zoat gets fed up with you, he's not bothered anymore, and you cannot quell the seethe. But of course, the other interesting thing about that is that it also means returning to Precipice is not only escalating the timer and bringing you closer to losing, but it's also making the game harder as well because you're burning an Archaeotech card. It won't go back into the deck. That means you have less Archaeotech to find. That means you have less Archaeotech to give to the Zoat to keep him happy, to keep him trusting you. And it also means you're more likely to draw these Shardquake cards, which means your combats get tougher. So it's a really nice way of escalating everything all at once in a very, very simple way. It's a very simple mechanism. It's just each time you return to Precipice, one of those cards is gone. But it's causing problems in multiple ways. It's making the Zoat less trustful. It's making it harder for you to upgrade your characters. It's making it more likely your combats are going to be tougher. Excellent. Really good, simple mechanism to keep the pressure on. I like that a lot. Next up, you get some new exploration cards. You get 10 new combat cards and 5 new challenge cards. And I'm not going to spoil all the challenges in this particular video. If people really want to see all of these exploration cards and anything else that might be a little bit spoilery, do please let me know in the comments. I can always do a quick follow-up video where I can spoil the cards for those people who are interested. But for now, I'm going to keep them hidden But I am going to show you just one of the combat cards. I don't think that's going to be a massive spoiler. And the reason I'm going to do that is because quite often I have said adding more combat cards that are just new combat maps aren't particularly exciting to me. But this expansion obviously uses the seethe mechanism, and therefore there is a more interesting thing baked into the combat cards. So we're going to look at just one. If you really don't want to see any of the exploration cards and you don't want to see this one, I will put a timestamp so you can just jump ahead to the next bit where I talk about the next stuff. So here we have an example of one of the combat cards, and as with all of the Blackstone Fortress expansions, every card has a little icon at the bottom that designates which expansion it is from. That icon will either be black or purple. If the icon is black, when you have completed the mission, you can incorporate those cards into your core game experience. If the symbol is purple, then you can't. You have to set it aside. And the reason this particular card is purple is because it is using the seethe mechanism, where we have some yellow areas and we have some blue areas. So when you set up this particular combat, at the start of the combat, those yellow areas will be visible and that blue path will not be on the board. However, if you draw a Shardquake discovery card, then the yellow areas will vanish and the blue area will appear, and then a subsequent quake will reverse that again and the blue area will disappear. Those yellow areas will come back. And you're going to see that on the combat cards, and you're also going to see it in the strongholds that are printed in the quest book and in a separate final stronghold encounter card. The Deadly Alliance rulebook follows the same format as the No Respite one. You get some fluff, you get all of your details for any new rules, and then there are 3 individual strongholds. So for each of your first 3 expeditions in the Deadly Alliance campaign, you will create a short access route based on guidance in this book, and then if you complete that access route, you will go to the relevant stronghold, which is printed here in this book. I'm not going to show those in this video. Again, I think it's not really spoiling anything, because when you actually get to those strongholds, you're going to have to set them up to play them. But I think it's the kind of thing that people might prefer to actually experience as they get to it, rather than having someone spoil it all. Again, if you want to see that stuff, I can put it in another video maybe. Then we have our 3 relic cards, which have all of the rules for those special relics. Again, not going to spoil these in this particular video. But one of the things that is interesting about the relics, I mentioned earlier that they have a pro and a con. They have something that makes them useful, but they also have a disadvantage. They also have a secondary disadvantage, because when you have one of the relics, in addition to having the card which has the rules for the relic, you also have a relic counter, and you have to place that relic counter over one of your wounds on your character sheet, which means the whole time you have one of these relics, you have less actions available to you. You are less effective, you have less options in each of your turns, and that also means it's easier for you to get knocked out, it's easier for you to go unconscious. So again, that's another way in which they have made this tougher. And I think overall, looking at everything that this expansion has done, I do think they have made an attempt to make things harder. And I don't know if that's just a pushback against people's general complaints of Blackstone Fortress that it's too easy, or whether they feel that the Zoat is so stupidly powerful that it needs all those other things to make the heroes less. My concern at this point is that it's going to become the Zoat show, and your heroes are going to be so encumbered with relics and other hindrances, and the Zoat's just going to go off on a crazy rampage and just smash everything to bits with his Eradicator Glove. That could be a little bit infuriating. I feel like there is a potential that you might start to feel like you're being railroaded a little bit, and you just end up chasing a Zoat who's going off wild and doing whatever he wants. And it can again be frustrating, because if the Zoat dies at any point, if he runs off into the thick of an enemy formation and gets knocked out, you lose the whole mission. The whole mission is over if the Zoat dies. So, you know, it's something that Again, I'm going to have to see it playing out to see exactly how it works. But I do have some minor reservations that it might start to feel a little bit like you're just wandering around, occasionally prodding the Zoat in the right direction if you can. Regardless, if you manage to stay in control of everything and you complete the first 3 strongholds, you will get to take on the final stronghold, which is the Shard Cell. And I always wonder why they put some of the missions in the quest book and then they do the final stronghold as a separate card. I feel like a little separate quest book might have been the better way to do that, but what do I know? Regardless, if you complete the Shard Cell, you will get this big chunky envelope which has goodies in it, and I don't know what they are. And I'm not going to open them because, as with all of the other expansions for Blackstone Fortress, it is a secret sealed envelope that is your special reward for making it to the end of the quest. And I feel that anybody who has made it this far into my video deserves a special reward because I've been going on for quite some time. So I'm probably going to wrap things up at this point. I'm going to say that this looks like a good expansion. It looks interesting. It does the thing that No Respite did, which I enjoyed more than Dreaded Amble or Traitor Command. It does that thing where it gives you specific strongholds to work towards, and then those strongholds have interesting things happening in them. They have combats that have more of an internal narrative to them. They have things you have to achieve. It's not just lay out a map, here's some enemies, fight the enemies, get to the maglev, go to the next fight. It's a little bit more detailed than that. There's a bit more going on. I've always said throughout all of my Blackstone Fortress videos, I always wanted more missions that were like little mini narratives, something where rather than just going to a combat that is a fight, you have to go to a combat where you have to achieve something like, you know, maybe the area's flooding or the system's overloaded or it's about to explode or bits are collapsing or the drones are on high alert and you've got to switch off the power units or something. Things like that, things that give you something, an objective, something exciting, something to latch onto. And that's what you're getting more of in this Zoat expansion, and it's what you got more of in No Respite. So overall, I'm feeling happy about my purchase. I think the Zoat Miniature is lovely. As always, Blackstone Fortress is an expensive game. These expansions are expensive, but there may be ways to get this expansion without the miniature for a cheaper price. And I think this is probably the penultimate expansion. We've obviously been told that there is one final expansion coming somewhere down the line. And yes, they may squeeze something extra in, but already we're not seeing any more content in White Dwarf. We may still get some more, and obviously the lockdown and all those other situations that Games Workshop are dealing with may have caused them to restructure how they're publishing things over the coming months. But I'm not expecting any other expansions until we get our final expansion. I'm normally wrong, but if this is the penultimate expansion, I think it's a good lead up before the final culmination of the story, the final conclusion of this epic adventure into the Blackstone Fortress. And I guess that's all I've got to say about that for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have liked it, please consider pressing the like button. If you really liked it, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, because it really helps the channel. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.